So we've been raising quail now for a little over a year, and everything was going really good until about 2 or 3 months ago, and we really saw a decline in our productivity and our hatch rates. So we wanted to make a video to kind of share with you what we did to correct that problem and just kind of troubleshoot through the different causes. And so if you're having the same issues, we hope this video will help you. So there's 4 main things to consider when you're dealing with egg productivity decline. The first one that you want to consider is the age of your hens. Typically, these are going to lay up to about 18 to 24 months old, and then they're going to start to decline. And that wasn't our issue because our oldest hens are only a little over a year old, and then we have some younger hens that are about 5 months old. But ideally, you'd want to replace them after 2 years. The breeder that we bought ours from, he said that he actually replaces his hens at 14 months. But again, he's into a huge operation for maximum egg production. And so for your typical homestead, that may not really necessarily apply. But I mean, he's producing millions of eggs a year that he's selling to these big companies that make pickled quail eggs and stuff. So he's at a whole different level than we are. But again, for him, his advice was replace your hens at 14 months. But typically, I think you can go a little bit longer than that to 18 to 24 months. The second thing to consider is your feed. You want to get a good quality game bird feed. You can get by with just chicken feed with, it's going to have a lower protein of about 16 to 18%, and that'll get you by, but really you need, for your chicks, at least like a 26% or higher. We use a 28% game bird starter for our chicks, but then at 6 weeks old, when they start to lay their first eggs, we switch them over to a game bird layer. It's 20% protein. But the main thing that it's going to have that you really want your egg layers to have is the calcium for the eggshell production. So those would be the 2 things to consider for feed. And for the most part, they're a complete feed. All of our egg layers, that's all they get. But the ones that we raise for meat out on pasture, they can pick through the grass and get bugs and grass and whatever else they want to eat as well. Now the third thing to consider is, are your birds under any kind of stress? Now, I did not think this was my problem, but it ended up being part of the problem. We've had some possum issues here lately, and me and my son actually killed one last night trying to dig in underneath our pastured quail. And I would assume that possum probably came up here to where our caged quail are as well. Not that he could get to them, but just him being around could put them under stress. And just like any other animal, they're just not going to perform at their peak if they're being threatened by a predator, constantly every night. So that's something to consider, and if you don't know, I mean, maybe you set a game camera up where your quail are and just see what comes out at night. You may be surprised. The possum issue caught me by surprise. But the third thing would be stress. And then the last thing, which turns out to be the major thing, and it's what most breeders are going to tell you, and it was definitely our issue, was the lighting. As we're getting into early to mid-fall now, our days are getting shorter, and so there's just not that many hours of daylight now. They might get 12 to 13 hours, but they really need closer to 16 hours. And so what we ended up doing was bringing in just this little light to supplement. And so we actually had the light come on at 4 a.m. and then it kicks off at 8 p.m. So the light just stays on 24/7. Oh, not 24/7. That's stupid because I just said it doesn't. So the light stays on for 16 hours a day, and it turns out between that and getting rid of the predators, hopefully we got rid of all of them. The quail are doing much better, and they're still not laying at where they were, but we're starting to get eggs, and so I feel like we're moving in the right direction as far as that goes. So those would be the 4 things that I would, consider if you've had like a decline or a complete drop in your quail egg production. So we also had an issue with our hatch rate being dramatically declined. So here are the top 3 things to consider to get your hatch rate where they need to be. So the first thing to consider is your incubator. And we did make a separate video on some incubator issues we had when we first got started, and we can put a link for that down below. But ideally, you want your incubator to be able to turn your eggs for the first 14 days. And then you want to keep your eggs between 99 to 100 degrees. And also you want to make sure that the humidity level is, for the first 14 days, is around 40 to 50%. And then for the last 3 or 4 days after that, that it is up to like 60 or maybe even 70%. And then also, just a side note, when you're incubating your eggs, you know, those first 14 days they need to turn, but those last 3 or 4 days you actually take them off your turner and just kind of lay them flat in there for them to finish hatching. So the second thing that you want to consider is your egg age and condition. We collect our eggs every day, and then over the span of about 3 days is normally what it takes us to collect enough to fill our incubator to its maximum capacity. And over the span of that 3 days, I'll actually have the egg turner sitting on the counter, not in the incubator. And so I keep them at room temperature. And where we keep them, it's in a basement too, so it's a lower room temperature, between 68 and 70 degrees typically. And so I'll actually plug in the egg turner, and just so they'll just rock back and forth for those 3 days so that egg yolk doesn't you know, stick to the side wall, and it just keeps them turning. And we've had really good success that way. I know some people, they'll put them in the refrigerator. I've tried that. It didn't really increase our hatch rate any, and it's just simpler just to stick them in the egg turner, and then when it's full, you just pick the egg turner up and set it in the incubator and turn on your incubator, and you're ready to go. And as far as the eggs that we collect to incubate, we want them to be clean. We want them to, you know, be fairly uniform in size, have a healthy shell, and also completely unwashed. You know, any of the other eggs that don't meet those standards, you know, they'll get washed, and we'll either sell them as eating eggs, or we'll pickle them ourselves. You know, and the third thing that I want to mention as far as your hatch rate and getting it to where it needs to be is the age of your breeders. As mentioned earlier in this video, we'll swap our hens out at 18 to 24 months. The breeder that we bought from, he does it at 14 months. But one thing I did not think about was the fertility of the males, and according to him, the males, they decline in fertility quicker, and so he actually replaces his males, for his breeding males, every 6 months. You know, and so some of my males are over that 6-month mark, and then I've got some that are like right at 5 months. So I'm gonna try replacing some of my males as well too, and see if that'll get our hatch rates up. You know, for the first 10 months that we were hatching quail eggs, pretty much every batch was like right at 80% hatch rate. So, you know, for every 100 eggs we set, we hatched out 80 chicks. But then the last 2 batches, I had one at 50%, which I've still heard that's still kind of average, but then I had some at like 25 to 30%, which is not good at all. So, but correcting these things will hopefully get our hatch rate up. And like I said, it's already worked on getting our egg productivity back where it needs to be. Well, thanks for watching our video. We hope it was helpful to you. If you haven't done so already, be sure to consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel for more videos. And if you want to see our quail setup video, be sure to click right here. See you next time.